dear friends, here we are with another study of the book Green Light by the Spirit, Andrea Luiz, through the mediumship of Francisco Cândido Xavier. Here we have another chapter, another week, another chapter, another opportunity for us to be together and learning with Andrea Luiz. And today's chapter is all about social gatherings. And you see the works of the good spirits right here because we are, this chapter will be hopefully forever on the internet because we are broadcasting to you on Facebook and YouTube. However, there will be playlists for people to watch, but when it first airs, we are leaving Halloween, going into Thanksgiving, meaning we'll have a lot of times where we'll be meeting with folks, with our friends and family members to celebrate the holidays. It's a perfect timing for us to review the guidelines of social gatherings. And that's chapter 41. Andrea Luiz says, a meeting in an organization or at home should always be done in a spirit of fraternal communion. When the thorn of slander arises, try to isolate it with goodness, without disrespecting those who are absent and without hurting those who commented on it. Unquote for now. Let's think about our most recent gatherings. Any time, anywhere on earth that you have gathered, was the meeting in an organization, meaning perhaps at work, at the PTA, at the community center, whatever your activities are in the world, were they done in the spirit of fraternal communion? Because we need to venerate this opportunity to be together. We need to honor the skills we have, what we say, how we say it, where we go, what kind of relationships we have, because remember, we are in both realms. We interact with those incarnate and those discarnate, and we have a way to triage, to curate our experience. So he says, if the thorn of slander arises, so someone comes to you and says, did you hear this about so and so? He says, isolate it with goodness. The figurative speech of he uses is a cotton of goodness. So you capture the mental image and then you developed it in this goodness. That way you don't disrespect those people who are absent. You don't insult the person who uttered the slander. And of course, if we are the ones who are about to make a comment about someone, then we stop and we think, is this helpful? Is this truth? Is this useful? Is it going to hurt someone? Because honestly, we only know one side of its story. You know your truth, they know their truth, right? Their side of the story. And I could stop here. All we have to do is go to gatherings thinking this is a fraternal meeting. We are together to cherish one another, to help one another. And that would be it. But he continues, quote, noble opinions about people, happenings, or circumstances, or other things are always an indication of loyalty and moral education. When being in a group of people, ignore any disdainful phrase aimed directly or indirectly towards you. Unquote for now. How many times we are in a meeting and we think we heard something and we take it so personally. And that's part of the growth that we have. We have to not see the world as revolving around us, all about what we do, what we think. But perhaps I misheard, perhaps they meant something else. And then he says, ignore if someone's trying to um, send some darts towards you, a comment, a phrase to you, because it may not be useful for us to engage. And if we don't kindle the fire dies, right? If we don't keep feeding the fire, pouring gasoline on the fire dies. This is avoid saying jokes which are disrespectful. How many of us use sarcasm? We try to use humor, then we choose our words poorly, and then we are misunderstood, and we create more problems than if we were um, quiet. There's another chapter here. There is chapter 39 that is related to words, saying things to others. So I'm going to go back a little bit because this is a study after all. We want to weave in the teachings and make the teachings all come together. Chapter 39, he says, you will dominate or be able to control the words you don't utter, you don't say. However, you have to bear the consequences, or you'll be subordinate to the consequences of the words you do utter. So when we are in a place and we perceive them as saying something directly or indirectly towards us that is not very elevated, then it's okay to be quiet because we will bear the consequences of what we say, but we have control of the words we don't. This is so relevant. And this book was written such a long time ago. The preface by Emmanuel is dated of 1971. And how many of us sees or experiences situations in daily life where if one of the parties had stayed quiet, it wouldn't be escalating to the point that we are spatting in the middle of a restaurant, in the streets, in places, in schools, because one party could have been charitable enough to be silent. And the reason we know this is because we video everything, right? You can watch people having these weird fights and tantrums, and you're like, what happened? Maybe if someone was quiet, didn't take it so personally, we would be having less of an issue. Now you're watching a lecture or you having an edifying conversation. Imagine the conversations that Luiz described to us when he was in Solar. He says, in the presence of a person who is talking about edifying subjects, do not whisper or yawn, for such an attitude shows lack of respect towards the theme in question. How many of us, someone is talking and you're like we're still in high school, right? We cover our mouths and we say something to the person next to us as if nobody can see we're doing that. And that's, he says here, Manuel, and Luiz is saying, this attitude shows a lack of respect because we're not fully present, we're not listening. Let's revert this. If you are talking and if you're talking about an edifying subject, let's say we're discussing one of these messages, we're talking about an activity that is helpful to the community, and someone turned around and started whispering in front of you, how would you feel? Potentially not very good. Therefore, we don't do this to others, right? It's always about don't do to others what you don't want them to do to us. This rule would have saved us so many troubles in this life and past lives. And he continues, quote, never disappoint people by leaving the place when people are giving talks or performing an artistic play. Sometimes they do leave halfway. And he's saying, don't disappoint people. And imagine if you're preparing a lecture, if you're preparing for a rehearsal, and the folks you love in the audience leave before it's done, it's very disappointing, even if they're not from your family. It's just that shows that they weren't interested. It can also mean that they have an emergency. But like we said, we take things so personally that we always make it about us. He says, quote, lectures, teachings, performances or any edifying subject requests silence and respect. So we want to be restrained. We want to ask ourselves, if God is granting me the opportunity to be here, what am I here to learn? Because sometimes we sit in a lecture, we say, I already studied this, and then we have this ego talk. Why am I here? I already studied these. Doesn't make sense. But God is allowing you to be there. Therefore, if we restrain, we show respect, we stay silent, not just outward silent, but inner silence. Because sometimes we're silent, but our brains like chattering, which means we're emanating these thoughts, the thought forms, the thought particles that are communicating and interacting with like thoughts all around the universe. So we're never present. We're never able to fully grasp what's being that opportunity that is so precious to us. He says, in meetings that have a serious purpose, never laugh or make others laugh or crack jokes will be another way to put it. Because we want to keep the seriousness of the meaning, the importance. Now, again, the best rule of all. Last but not least, he says, quote, we shouldn't make the most of social meetings to construct and help, to give others the best of ourselves so that the best of others can reach us. So when we emanate goodness, when we show the best, we prepare, we are diligent, we are on time, we are respectful, we are silent, we introspect, we think about the topic, we show care for them, then they are able to get that energy from you. We can be the vehicle that boosts their potentialities in this world. Because after all, we want to give to others the best of us. We want them to give us the best of themselves. Imagine if just by being silent and more mindful of our words today, this week, we can make it much better tomorrow. Much better society as well. And then with our thoughts, with our prayers, we can pray and elevate, construct, and edify. And that's why we're here today, together studying the words of Andrea Luiz. One more week. God willing, I'll be back with you next week or another week because it's all about God, right? So hopefully I will be back with you next week. Until then, stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.